Well, participatory economy means to be a replacement for capitalism. And the key values that guide it are self-management. People should have a say over their lives in proportion to the degree they're affected by decisions. Solidarity. The economy should produce feelings of mutual aid among people. Diversity. The economy should celebrate and create a wide range of options for people. And equity. The economy should reward people, should remunerate people in a way that's consistent with fairness. This, in my opinion, means that we should get more for the duration that we work, how long we work, how hard we work, and for the onerousness of the conditions under which we work. And there's just 4 basic institutions that I think accomplish this. And they simultaneously accomplish classlessness. That is, they eliminate one group dominating another group. And the 4 institutions are workers and consumers self-managed councils, equitable remuneration, what we call balanced job complexes, which means that we divide up work in a new way where everybody has a job that's comparably empowering to each other person's job, and what we call participatory planning, which replaces markets and central planning. And those 4 basic institutions, carried out differently in different places and times and situations, are at the heart of a new classless economy called participatory economics. A utopia is something, what it means is something that has nice qualities but is unattainable. Participatory economics is quite attainable. It is not a utopia in any sense, in any pejorative sense at all. It also isn't utopia in the sense of perfect. It's a way of organizing an economy that's consistent with meeting needs and developing potentials without classless, delivering to people control over their own lives, delivering solidarity, delivering equity. These institutions are not some kind of impossible thing. They don't run up against the laws of physics. They aren't counter to what it means to be a human being. There's nothing about it that's impossible. It's difficult to win, which is very different. It's difficult to win because there are powerful forces in the world that would not want this kind of economy to be achieved. Those forces are people who are in elites, people who own means of production, people who have a monopoly on empowering work. Many of them, too, will be put off by, will not like the ideas of participatory economics, and would try and obstruct it, try and prevent it from gaining a hearing, try and prevent it from gaining advocates. But as the number of advocates grows, as with any innovative set of ideas, the power of that advocacy increases. And as the power increases, it becomes possible to win new institutions. There's nothing about this that's impossible. It is difficult. But nobody said that winning a truly liberating world would be simple. It is difficult, and we have to do it. Well, lots of things can help to. There's 2 different questions. What would the institutions be that characterize an established participatory economy? And then what kinds of institutions in the meanwhile, now, could contribute to attaining it? So the institutions that would characterize it once attained, I mentioned earlier, are an equitable way of remunerating for how long we work, how hard we work, and the onerousness of the conditions under which we work. And workers and consumers self-managing councils. And what's called balanced job complexes, which means we change the division of labor. Instead of dividing up work so that about 1/5 of the workforce does all the empowering work, we divided that up so everybody, all 4/5, do a mix of jobs and tasks, a mix of tasks that is comparably empowering to what other people do. So you no longer have somebody who only does surgery. You have people who do some surgery and some cleaning of bedpans and other tasks so that their overall job is balanced for empowerment like everybody else's. And then there's something called participatory planning. Markets destroy equity. They destroy self-management. They destroy solidarity. They're not just neutral. They literally have intrinsic dynamics that destroy these virtues. So we can't have markets. Central planning is top-down and authoritarian, whereas markets are competitive. Central planning destroys these values also. So we can't have that. So we have to rule out central planning and markets as our means of allocation. And participatory economics, its 4th institutional feature, is called participatory planning. It's a mechanism by which workers and consumers councils cooperatively negotiate with one another in a process that arrives at allocation. How much is produced, how much is consumed, how much goes from this firm to that firm, that arrives at that in a way that is consistent with self-management. In the shorter run, before we attain it, lots of things can contribute to it. Mainly what's important is strong movements, powerful movements that are in position to win a sequence of gains that enriches people's lives, that improves people's lives, that begins to reveal the texture of a new society even now, plants the seeds of the future in the present, and that leads to more and more power so that people are able to win more and more and eventually a new economy. So you could imagine things like, say, full employment, or income redistribution, or changes that give workers more knowledge over what's going on in the workplace, or that literally create workers' councils or consumers' councils. You can imagine the institutions that have sprung up in Spain and all over the world now in this crisis that we're in, could begin to morph into, to turn into that kind of institution. The assemblies could begin to turn into neighborhood political and economic assemblies. They could also begin to protest against and then resist the acts of corporations, including eventually sitting in at corporations, and eventually, when there's enough workers in a corporation, occupying a corporation, and eventually redefining the structure of a corporation. This starts to be a powerful movement. Movements could say, occupy empty buildings and turn them over to homeless people, and then change the way they're organized. Change their structure, have it consistent with self-management, have it consistent with equity and mutual aid and self-management, and then those buildings become the seeds of the future in the present. And they become institutions now which lead toward the better future that we want. It's not so different in the United States. There's certain alternative media in the United States that does get pretty significant support from a narrow set of wealthy people who are very progressive and who want to support this kind of activity. Z is Z Communications, that's the name of the projects that I work with, the umbrella name. We don't tend to get that kind of money. Every once in a while it happens. In particular, every once in a while, somebody with a lot of politics and a lot of political commitment might actually die and leave in their will money to alternative media. That can happen. Or somebody gives it. But Z is not a typical recipient because we are a little bit further left than others. We tend to be supported by the fact that we sell subscriptions to the magazine, we sell videos, and we collect donations from people online very, very, very effectively. And so we get a lot of income from those donations. And this sum total of donations and sales is enough to sustain the activity and to pay the staff. And the staff leads a very desirable life because we work in a self-managed environment and we're doing something worthy and we get a living income and even a reasonable income. Certainly not an exorbitant income, but we don't believe in poverty for the left. That doesn't inspire people. What inspires people is to see that you can live your values and live a good life as well. And so that's what we try to do. And we succeed. It's hard to replicate because we went very early, as you pointed out. We've been around for a while. We started doing internet stuff before there was a World Wide Web. And that meant that we were doing all this stuff before other people were. It is very valuable to do. But you know, so in Spain, there are some large institutions. So take the CGT or the CNT. These are large institutions. They're more powerful than, I mean, you know, Z Communications doesn't remotely touch these institutions for its scale and its power. And the number of people who are involved in these institutions is quite large. And if all of those people were of a mindset that it was important, if you're a leftist, it was important if you were eager to create a new world, that you contribute, and that you contribute to supporting and financing alternative media, there'd be a lot of alternative media in Spain. It would be very, very effective alternative media. I mean, people who are religious give a significant portion of their income to churches. People on the left obviously not, it's not a religion, but it is something that we ought to care about, and that we ought to want to achieve and accomplish. And so perhaps we should begin to consider, we leftists, we union members, we participants in movements, we should begin to consider that we need to give of ourselves, give of our incomes in such a way as to promote alternative media. Because alternative media is incredibly important to communicating truthful, inspiring information, as I'm sure the Attack TV station does. I wouldn't be doing it, I wouldn't devote myself to supporting participatory economics and participatory society if I didn't believe it was worthy. So I do believe it's worthy, and I do believe it has lessons to teach. I also think that the 50M movement has lessons to teach, and indeed they're being learned by the people who are occupying Wall Street and who are occupying cities now all over the world, and who are emulating some of the things that were already done in Spain. The stuff that, or the type of thing that I think that participatory economics might lend to and might contribute to the movements in Spain is some very clear understanding of this importance of division of labor, of this importance of how we organize our movements and how we organize our activities and our projects so that they don't reproduce all the old oppressive and alienating relations, but instead are truly classless. I think those lessons are very important. They're also important for who we try to appeal to. Sometimes, at least in the United States, movements begin to try to appeal to upper level people, people with higher incomes, people with more status. They look at media and they think, okay, we have to convince the people who run the media that they should cover us. They look at the government and they think we have to rationally argue with these people and get them to agree. And I think participatory economics, at least for those who are feeling that way at any given time, can also teach something. That's not how you communicate with those sectors. You communicate with those sectors by raising power, by developing movements that are strong enough to force them to comply with the things that you desire. So if the movement in Spain demands, say, full employment and redistribution of wealth and an end to cutting services and an enlargement of services, it's not going to get that by making a good case for it, which all of a sudden the government is convinced by, or the media is convinced by. That's not going to happen. What it can get, the way it can get it, is by creating a situation in which the government and the media decide we must give in. We must give in, or else we're going to pay an even greater cost. And so we will give in. And that's an important lesson. And there are other lessons, I think, that are associated with the model. Well, participatory economy means to be a replacement for capitalism. And the key values that guide it are self-management. People should have a say over their lives in proportion to the degree they're affected by decisions. Solidarity. The economy should produce feelings of mutual aid among people. Diversity. The economy should celebrate and create a wide range of options for people. And equity. The economy should reward people, should remunerate people in a way that's consistent with fairness. This, in my opinion, means that we should get more for the duration that we work, how long we work, how hard we work, and for the onerousness of the conditions under which we work. And there's just 4 basic institutions that I think accomplish this. And they simultaneously accomplish classlessness planning, which replaces markets and central planning. And those 4 basic institutions, carried out differently in different places and times and situations, are at the heart of a new classless economy called participatory economics. A utopia is something, what it means is something that has nice qualities, that is, they eliminate one group dominating another group. And the four institutions are workers and consumers self-managed councils, equitable remuneration, what we call balanced job complexes, which means that we divide up work in a new way where everybody has a job that's comparably empowering to each other person's job, and what we call participatory